So here's the tale of my neighbor's Seadoo machine, boys. It was suffering from, you'd start the machine, it would idle. The idle would get progressively rougher a minute or two later until it eventually failed completely. In addition to being both fuel and oil injected, like most modern two-stroke machines, there's a separate air injection circuit as well for emulsifying air, not combustion air, but emulsifying air. That complicated the troubleshooting considerably. This machine is not fixed, but the parts are on order. I will update the description to let you know how it turns out once the part is received and installed. So we looked at the fuel pressure, and right away we noticed that the fuel pressure was erratic. Once the machine started to stumble, we noticed that the fuel pressure had gone from the spec value of 105 psi to 90 psi, and it was a really erratic, followed shortly thereafter by the erratic idle, the stumble, and eventually the engine would actually cut out completely. So after many days of pissing around, we're looking at everything under the sun, including my neighbor actually changing on spec the fuel rail, which includes the two injectors and the two fuel pressure regulators, because it is both air and fuel injected. Yeah, we bet you an interesting setup. But to no avail. The defect was actually still the same. So a week later, enter the Pico scope. I'm making the story brief here, boys. I'm leaving out a lot of detail in the interest of getting to the point. We eventually ended up making our way back to the fuel pump. Although we thought that was a possibility from the word go, we couldn't actually get anything definitive on it until the Pico scope actually showed us some detail here that gave us enough data to actually make a judgment call on the fuel pump and actually set about purchasing another fuel pump. We don't have one. I can't tell you the end of the story because I don't know it yet. We don't have a fuel pump, but I think the trace here kind of tells the tale. So you can see here on the trace here, boys, the red trace, channel B, is voltage. We've got 0 to 20 volts, or minus 20 to 20, of course. You can see there we're right around the system voltage at 12 volts. The battery was a bit marginal on this Seadoo because it's been out of service for so long, but it was at 12 volts, and a steady 12 volts is the point. And you can see there the current draw for the fuel pump, the blue trace. I think it's around 9.5 volts ish. Let's bring the there, you can see there. Yeah, so that's just a nominal voltage there, a nominal current draw of about 9.5 amps there, boys, right? So here's where it got interesting. So the vehicle was operating in a steady state of operation here, as the two parameters actually shows. Let me step you to the next frame. And here's where things started to go south. So I think it's pretty clear here. You can see that for whatever reason, the fuel pump is actually dropped from a current draw of about 9.5 to, let's actually check it. I think it's dropped down to about 7.5. Yeah, so right around 7.5 amps there, boys. You can see where the cursor is, and the idle started to get erratic, followed a few seconds later by eventually actually dying. So let me just step another frame ahead, and you'll be able to see that. So that's continued to operate at the reduced current draw there, and I think one more frame will do it. There, and then you can see the system. You can see the current actually drop to nothing as the fuel pump is actually pulled from operation by the engine control module there on the red trace. That's what's supplying the 12 volt supply to the pump. This was enough data for us to actually call a pump on it because we had checked everything else. I checked the coil output. The two of them looked to be the same. A wee bit of a different trace on the screen from what I was expecting, but consistent, you know, with respect to the firing line and the spark line. And the vehicle will operate actually on one cylinder, although erratic, so the likelihood of it being an ignition issue was pretty remote from the get-go. So this actually is only proving the point here, boys, that the Pico scope can actually be extremely valuable. And of course, you guys know I'm a fan of the hand tech, and I've been trying to support the hand tech, but at the end of the day, This memory buffer here is what actually allowed us to actually make the call on this fuel pump. As you can see, being able to step through time and actually see this, and this portion right here in particular, you know, had we not been able to see that, I think this would have been a very difficult judgment call to actually make, right? So there you can see it there. And you can see all the humps, all the commutator, it looks to be, you know, they're all there. And then we have just an inexplicable drop from here. All of a sudden the system right at this point here, from this point forward, decides it's going to drop its current draw. What we rationalized was it's actually the pump element itself is probably internally bypassing, because if it was a bearing, of course, the current would go up. Something imposing a drag on the system, the current would go up, not down. It looks like the pump is actually being unloaded. As we said, the fuel pressure regulator and injectors have already been replaced. So at this point in time, we're reasonably sure it's just the pump itself. Anyway, that's it, boys. I hope that was certainly a wee bit different. An air injection system, air and fuel injection system with two separate coils for the injectors, one for the fuel, one for the air. And an air pump and a fuel pump all combining inside a manifold is very, very different for me. First time I've even heard of it, let alone seen it. But this machine is not new. It's I think closing in on 20 years old. So I guess it's been used in two-stroke technology for some time. And anyway, I hope you found that somewhat interesting. I know I did, and certainly reinforced the notion that the Picoscope is a fantastic product. There's no doubt about that. That's it, boys. Cheers.